The intention of this video is to provide a guided tour of the northern site of the British Library, which sits on the Thorp Arch trading estate. It captures the appearance of the site and buildings in 2021 ahead of redevelopment. The site occupies a small area of what used to be the Thorp Arch Royal Ordnance Factory, built in 1942 to provide ammunition during the Second World War. In 1958, Donald Urquhart, on behalf of what was at the time named the National Lending Library for Science and Technology, acquired 60 acres of the site, specifically the area that had comprised the engineering workshops and the locomotive sheds. It's possible to see how little the shape of the site has changed up until 2021. I've drawn a sketch derived from part of a 1940s plan of ROF Thorp Arch, and when it's placed next to a Google map aerial view of the British Library, you can see the similarities. I've reorientated the current aerial view so that northeast is at the top. Modern buildings are masked out in green, leaving the existing 1940s buildings viewable. I'll reference these on the walking tour, but they include an engine shed, which is the white building you see at the top of the aerial view, and some small bunkers, which are built into the grassy bank at the perimeter of the site. This photograph, taken by me from the Urquhart building, gives a nice contrast of the old and new builds. The oldest 1940s buildings are nearest the camera, and if you look at the building on the far right with the pointed roof, you can see at its base evidence of a railway platform. The whole Thorp Arch factory was once surrounded by a circular railway line, which was used for bringing in raw materials and transporting out the ammunition to the London and North East Railway line, to which it was connected. The building at the rear is a warehouse containing the National Newspaper Collection, which is stored in reduced oxygen conditions in order to prolong its life. So I'm heading out of the back of Building 6, which is where I work, facing south, looking towards the poplar trees, which I have photographed on many occasions across the seasons and the years. And I'm going to pan round so you can see a whole variety of builds. Building 4 with the pitch roofs is part of the 1940s build that I spoke of earlier. The building I've come out of was built in 1970s, also known as the Urquhart building, and houses the Document Supply Centre. The flat roof building is a more modern build, built in 1991 in order to house the cataloguing department, which centralised and moved up from London. And I joined them when I started here in 1992. And that building over there, the Porter Cabin, is the holiday play scheme for the benefit of the staff. Children and grandchildren can come there. And at the rear of Building 27, I can remember in 1999, I think it was August the 11th, thereabout, we all stood and tried to observe the total eclipse of the sun via our various pinhole cameras. And I remember a couple of workers wearing spot welding helmets in order to try and view it. So the building on the left is Building 31, also known as the Additional Storage Building. It's a warehouse that was built in 2009 in order to store low-usage collection items. Like the newspaper building in the photograph earlier, the stock is stored in reduced oxygen atmospheric conditions in order to help preserve its life. It also has an automated retrieval system. It's got a robot that whizzes up and down the shelves, locating and retrieving the relevant crate of books or serials for delivery to staff. And there is a viewing platform, which you'll be delighted to hear has full oxygen, that allows visitors to see the robot in action. And some point after it was opened, I was lucky to be able to go on a staff tour to see it. The building that I'm currently passing on the right is Building 26. That was built around 1991 again and houses the technology department. I'm currently heading north towards the entrance of the site, and in a minute I will pan around and you'll be able to see the Urquhart building from the other side, and you'll also get a better look at that interesting metallic decorative exterior of the additional storage building. So there's Urquhart. This is the entrance of building 26, and there we are looking back towards the warehouse building. So I've followed the road round towards the entrance to the library site. The gatehouse is ahead of me, and on my left, but you can't see them at the moment, is a bank of trees which are absolutely gorgeous in autumn, beautiful colours, and I'm going to put an image up in a minute. Just swinging around, have a pan around the car park and another site of the Urquhart building in the distance. So I'm passing the gatehouse at the entrance to the British Library. Now, if you remember that 1940s map I showed you at the beginning, it had quite a long platform marked on it, and I believe that the line I'm walking along here probably is about where the platform would have run, or possibly slightly to my left. I'm just going to pan round and have a look at that big building, warehouse building called Building 2324, also I think known as the Corn Store. Houses, lending material, and also some low-use legal deposit monographs are kept in there. There's quite a wealth of wildlife on the site. You often hear buzzards circling overhead, and it was somewhere around here that I sighted a stoat a couple of years ago. I wasn't quite sure what I was seeing, suddenly glimpsing underneath a shrub. But I think I saw it once more later on by the engine shed, which we'll see later. As I'm walking towards the front of the Urquhart building, I'm just pausing the video to say something about it. It was a staged build comprising buildings 6 and 6A, created one after the other and then joined together. There are currently 7 floors, of which floor 1 and the even-numbered floors have concrete flooring, whereas floor 3 and 5 are a little like mezzanine levels, as they have timbered flooring which have a certain bounce and make a louder noise when walking across them. They also have banistered gaps which allow you to see down or even shout down to the people on the floor below. The windows are tall and thin slits, designed originally to reduce the amount of natural light entering the building and thus fading the collection. So you need to pull a light cord when going down an aisle in order to consult material. Floors 2 to 7 contain the Document Supply Centre collection. This is material that can be loaned to users as opposed to the legal deposit material, which can only be consulted in the British Library's reading rooms. It also features a conveyor belt and a paternoster lift system for moving crates of books around the building. This side of the Urquhart building is due to be redeveloped into the main entrance for visitors to the library in the years to come. So we're continuing the tour, and I'm making my way towards the current entrance for visitors to the British Library. Building 1, which we'll see in a minute, is one of the older legacy 1940s building. Reception area, as I say, and also the reading room, and it has a number of meeting rooms and also a conference suite. I'm walking alongside the reception area. You will be able to see the entrance when I come back this way later on in the walk. Opposite, you get this lovely bank of daffodils in March and April. They planted some different coloured ones at one point so that it would come up spelling out BL for British Library. I'm not sure to what extent they're still visible. We're going to see in a minute the first of 3 bunkers that are built into the bank. I've speculated about what these might have been for. Originally, I wondered if it was to store volatile material, but as all of this were engineering workshops and locomotive sheds and the infrastructure rather than the ammunition building, you're just going to see in it a minute, I think estate store cones in it. Yeah. I don't think that seems reasonable. I have wondered, having read that they did obviously get air raids going over, whether it was just simply an air raid shelter and that the people who worked around this area just dived in there when the planes went over. There was recorded that a plane had dropped a bomb somewhere in the area. Don't think it did much damage, and they did shoot it down somewhere around Filey and discovered that the pilot had taken photographs of the Thorp Arch factory area. This area is a lovely area for wildlife as well. I was shot round the corner and surprised a woodpecker, green woodpecker it was. The building we've just been passing on the right is Building 25, home to the National Bibliographic Service at one time. It's empty just at the moment. And I'm just going to go and have a look at this thing because I don't know if it's a 40s, 1960s build or what, but I love this industrial social history. It says Ferrybridge Foundry on it. I'd like to think it's a relic from the 1940s site, but I really don't know. I'm merging, as you can see, newspaper building opposite, and as a pan round, the canteen, building 7, is in front of me. Every building, no matter how small, has a number. So building 3 and building 25 on our right, which I walk round the back of. And then they're going to be heading off to building 8. So back with the social history, because building 8 is also known as the engine shed. And that is exactly what it was in the 1940s. It's visible on the map. And so I'm walking a path, again, that I think must skirt round the line of previous railway tracks. The woodland on the left, as you might be able to pick up, is always full of bird song. I mean, this is probably one of my favourite parts of the site because it can be real wildlife paradise, really. The birds, the grassy bank that I'm going to walk to the top of in a minute is butterflies in the summer. You get gatekeepers, meadow browns, blues, 6-spotted burnet moth, cinnabar moth, just all sorts, and woodpeckers fly over your head around here. It's just a lovely place to be walking around. So here we go. Social history, 1940s, build, engine shed. I really hope this one stays. And you might also spot in a minute a sign which you might be curious about. I'm going to have a pan round, have a look behind me any second now, at the place where I've been, and you get this woody copse there as well, which is a nice spot. You're going to see a sign with a picture of children on, which is a legacy of Building 29, which no longer exists, but was right in front of where I'm standing. And I'll show you some photos of what that was in a minute at the end of the next section. So this grassy bank, which is full of wildflowers in the summer, gives a good view of the newest build, the newspaper building, and an old one, the engine shed. And exactly where I'm standing was the site of the Bookworms nursery, which I'll put a couple of images up, and you can see the engine shed right in the background of one. Building 32 behind me was built in 2015 to house the National Newspaper Collection. It had previously had its home since the 1930s in Colindale in London, but in 2014, from what I've read, about 280,000 or more bound packages of newspaper were brought up, presumably up the A1 in lorries, for their new home in the newspaper building here. I've also read that there's something in the order of 33 kilometres of newspapers in the building. Just walking alongside it past a bit of meadowland that again in summer is absolutely lovely with wild flowers, and I will see if I can get an image of what it looks like in the height of summer in a minute. I also remember walking around the end of this building, and somebody had said that there was some martins nesting in the area just above one of the doors or windows, and I think I've got an image of that somewhere. Little poster of walking facts. That whole area that we just saw is a excuse me, soakaway. You can see the sheer enormity of the newspaper building if I pan around. Also always intrigued when I'm out walking to see these chocks lying on the floor. I don't know if they get used or not. And then we're back with the old, the 1940s, I guess there would have been engineering workshops in front of us, now building 4A. It's attached by a link corridor to building 4. I'm just having a 360 pan around. I'm the other side of the canteen now, looking towards it, and then I'm twirling around past the newspaper building again. Building 4A and 4, which we'll be walking alongside, have been the home of less current serials. I've had occasion to go looking for some serial parts in there that date back to probably 1970s, 80s, that kind of time period. It also has the some music, printed music collection in there too. I'm heading past then buildings 4 and 4A, less current stores, which you'll see are joined by a link corridor there. The brick building that you saw on the left-hand side is the home base of the current on-site engineers. And those who work on site, who have the longest memories, say that somewhere near to where I've just been walking past, a very long time ago, there were some allotments, and I don't know anything much more than that, really. Whether it was members of staff were allowed to come and grow some produce on site. I'll have to ask somebody about that. So I'm walking alongside the south boundary of the British Library site. You'll see that I've come full circle and I'm very close to being back to where I started. The building in front of me is the holiday play scheme, which runs obviously in, as the name suggests, in holiday time for the children and grandchildren of staff. So I've done a full circuit of the site. We're back at the rear of the building 6 where I started, but there's still just a couple of bits that I'm going to show you around the centre that got missed out on the first circuit. I'm heading around the other side of building 4 so that you can have the pleasure of seeing an old railway platform, and we can also have a look at building 2, which is also an old 1940s build. So there we are, railway platform. And in a minute I'm going to carry on round, and that row on the left of buildings, which I'm not looking at right now, is building 2, which houses administrative offices, employee services are in there. all of these buildings are linked by the corridors. When I first came to work at the British Library, moving about inside, because everything's got this link corridor, you don't really get a sense of the fact that you are actually moving from one building to another. I mean, obviously, you know that you are, but so you don't get a sense really of I'm now leaving building 2 and I'm entering building 3, which is what actually we're just approaching now. So the flat roof building in front of us there joined onto building 2 by a link corridor. So a bit of a rabbit warren when you first join the library and you're finding your way around. Just having a general pan around all the old buildings and another platform there. I've come back to the area by the newspaper building, and we're going to pick up the road that I missed out by doing a circuit, which is the inner road. Canteen directly in front of me. It's the building with the windows you can see. As I'm walking round, I'll just take an opportunity to say that the site the newspaper building occupies had formerly been a playing field, and every year there would be a sports day type event. Different sections around the library could create a team of, I think it was 6 people, and they competed in a whole variety of fun games. One year I definitely remember we had something that was sort of It's a Knockout based, and I can remember inflatable mattress and pugil sticks and foam and goodness knows what going on. We're coming back round to the copse that we saw from the other side when I walked past the engine shed, which you can see obviously in the distance there. There also used to be a path that went across there that you could shortcut across to the nursery. And in fact, the nursery used to get its food, the big main meals were done in the canteen, and they used to take them across on a trolley across a path which had some rather dodgy paving stones occasionally. And so I remember the ladies in the nursery saying it was quite an interesting job trying to push this thing across the path to get to the nursery, the other side of the engine shed. Nice woody copse area, obviously haven for birds, and any minute now we're going to find ourselves another bunker. Just peeping into the mound, you'd easily walk past it and you wouldn't spot it. And if you have wondered what the interior might be like, I stuck my phone in the gap there to have a look and took a photo with a flash on, and that is it. I think it bends round to the left because you see the discoloured, the moss and the grass suggests that it obviously just carries on into the hill for a bit further. And we're just coming back up to building 25, and on our left as we swing round we've got the canteen and the car park next to it. This whole area is now our main assembly area, so the fire alarms go off, then this is where we head for. There was a time when our fire alarms go off and absolutely every single building on the site empties and everybody comes out for the drill. Nowadays the buildings have zonal fire alarms, and so just because somebody's alarms have gone off doesn't mean absolutely everybody has to come out, and the fire marshals would go around and check everybody was there, sign you off. This is building, oh, there you go, panning round towards the canteen. Building 3, which we just saw on our left, at one point was the home to Remploy Services, which used to work on site here. And I've been told the building 3 is also known as the Arsenal, which I suppose obviously fits in with the whole building of ammunition. But it also has some stores of material in there at the moment as well. Building 1 directly ahead again, and I can just see the window where I used to sit, somewhere between, was it 2003, 2005, something like that. And this is currently the visitors' car park, which is why there's red V's on the floor. So this time I have scrambled up the bank behind the garages, doing my urban explorer bit. I'm quite renowned in the team for exploring the grassy banks and tree areas. I came looking up here to see if I could see any evidence whatsoever of that railway line that would have run around and ended up at the platform near the gatehouse, which I mentioned earlier. So far, a small concrete post proclaiming electrical cables. I don't think that's 1940s. I think that's probably 60s or 70s, I would imagine. But having looked at the maps, I just felt that it must perhaps run right along the boundary of the site here. In the meantime, it's quite an attractive walk amongst the greenery. The Mayflower, hawthorn, I've got photographs of that. Looks beautiful when it's in flower. Just having a pier along the boundary here. I think the other side of these posts is land that's now occupied by a lorry sort of driver training plant. You can hear them being given instruction on how to drive heavy goods vehicles. Yeah, I've just got this theory that it would have run somewhere along there. Now around the back of building 25 again, still a loft on the grassy bank. And somewhere along here is some more bunkers. Usual telltale signs is moss like that growing over stone. So it could be that I'm walking right across what could be a long, substantial underground one hidden just under the roots of the tree here. Just going to have a peep inside. Not much to see there. It is actually the one that I have photographed from the other side, and it was right at the beginning of about half an hour ago, at the beginning of this video. I had taken a picture through that metal grate of what it looked like inside. Lots of rabbit holes as well. Oh, I mean, that's something I've not mentioned. This site was absolutely renowned for rabbits, and you can still walk outside of a building and see some baby bunnies relatively quite close to the buildings. Also, I think at one time Thorp Arch estate as a whole had a bit of an issue with feral cats. We had a couple of domesticated ones on site for quite a long time. They were called Rogers and Ollie. I think one was a ginger, and I can't remember about the other one. And they used to get fed at the gatehouse. So about 20 minutes ago I said I was going to be back along here, giving you a chance to have a look at the main entrance to the British Library. So visitors were coming through these doors, coming up on the left here. You'd see the reception desk on the right. The entrance to the reading room would then just be beyond the desk on the right-hand side. There's also a conference suite containing a lecture theatre and 2 training rooms, and there are lockers for the use of visitors, and there's also a cash machine. I'm going to bring this tour to an end just round the corner, and we're going to finish looking at the site of where the new entrance to the British Library is going to be built. So the Urquhart building that we're looking at the side of is going to have a massive refurb, facelift, and the new entrance will just be there along that side. So if you are watching this in the years to come, sitting in 2030 watching a video, you'll be able to contrast how it is now and how it was then. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this look around the site. I'm going to leave you with a random selection of images of the Boston Spa site of the British Library. And I'll finish by saying thanks very much for watching.